In this video, we're going to show you how to install the lower control arm on your Nissan Quest, located behind your front wheels. Using a 21mm socket, loosen and remove your lug nuts. Remove your wheel and set it aside. With the wheel off, we want to go ahead and remove our cotter pin here. We're going to use a pair of cutters. You're going to grab the tab or the leg on the cotter pin, and that should just drop out. If not, we just want to grab the end of it and pull that out. We're going to use a 32mm socket to loosen and remove the axle nut. Go ahead and set that aside. You want to make sure that the axle is free from the wheel hub itself, so just push on that. Ours is free. You can push on the inside of the axle, work that in and out. For any reason, if that's stuck, you can spray some rust penetrant in here. You can use a punch right inside the center of the axle and tap that in until that frees up. On the bottom side here, we have our lower control arm with the ball joint going up into the knuckle. Now, this is what we call a pinch bolt design, where a bolt goes through. It goes through the side of the ball joint, and then there's a nut on the other side, and it pinches the bolt. So there's a bolt head here. It's an 18mm, and we're going to put an 18mm ratchet on the other side. We want to go loosen this. We'll spin that knot off here. We'll set that aside. We now want to go ahead and put our pole jack underneath the ball joint here, and we want to go ahead and move this around so we can pull this bolt out of the knuckle. If you want to try and get this bolt out, you might want to spray some rust penetrant inside the split here and around the bolt side. You can gently tap the other side of the bolt. I'm going to put the nut on there so we don't damage the threads on the bolt. Go ahead and tap that. If you need to, you can use a brass punch to go ahead and work that bolt through. The other thing you can also do is you can play with the jack to try and either release the tension on this here or jack it up a little bit more to try and find that neutral position for this bolt to come out. We can lower our jack once we get that bolt out. On the back of our control arm here, we have a vertical bolt going up, and now these are 21mm bolt and nut. I'm going to put a wrench on the top. I'm going to use my impact driver on the bottom. Now, if we look at the front side of the control arm, we have the same setup, 21mm bolt and nut. Now we have our control arm still attached to our knuckle. The pinch bolt is out. What we're going to do is you want to be careful when prying this out. You don't want anything to drop down and swing down to hit you. So using your pry bar, we do want to go ahead and loosen our control arm. Now as we're doing this here, be aware that the CB axle is inside the wheel hub itself. Now our ball joint is coming out through the knuckle here, and it's right on the top. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a wedge tip punch chisel. I'm going to tap that in. I'm going to hold the control arm, give this a few whacks to try and open that up. I'm just going to hit the control arm, knocking that down. We're just going to continue to do this till we can get that out. Now we did spray this down with some more rust penetrant. It's clearly stuck in there. I'm going to tap those down and out. There we have it. Now in our case here, the sleeve here on our knuckle was a little bit rusty. So we're going to spray this down, and we're going to use a bore brush to go ahead and clean this out. After we cleaned it out with the bore brush, we want to go ahead and spray it down with some solvent and clean everything out. Wipe this down and get ready for installation of the new control arm. Install a couple lug nuts on the lower portion of the brake rotor. I'm going to take our control arm, feed this into the chassis here. Insert the forward mounted bolt. Get the nut installed on the top. With the knuckle pulled away, we can now get our inner portion of our control arm in place. Let's go ahead and feed our bolt up and in. Get the bolt installed there. Now at this point, we can lower our jack underneath the knuckle. Pull down on our control arm. Work that axle into the knuckle. Putting a pry bar between the subframe and the control arm, you can pry this down a little bit. And you want to go ahead and work that knuckle in. And go ahead and get our ball joint kind of lined up into this. You want to go ahead and lower the vehicle. You want to push our knuckle inboard and let that ball joint pop up inside. With that all the way in, let's go ahead and install our bolt. Let's go ahead and get that nut started. Let's go ahead and tighten everything down and torque it into place. Let's go ahead and tighten down our rear bolt. And we'll get our front one. And we can torque these down to 114 foot-pounds. And we can tighten this down, and we want to torque this to 46 foot-pounds. Install your axle nut here. We'll snug that down. We want to torque this down to 155 foot-pounds. We have 2 lug nuts on here. I'm going to rotate this, and we're going to put our pry bar in here. Now normally you can set this up right on the ground to do this, but we're going to use the pry bar for leverage. And now it'll actually lock once we rotate that. Once that's torqued, remove the pry bar and remove the lug nuts. Take a new cotter pin, insert that. I'm going to bend over one of the tabs, roll that right around, and snip off the excess on the other leg. At this point here, we can install our wheel. You want to repeat this process for the passenger side. At that point there, be sure to have an alignment performed after this job is done. Take your wheel and install it. I want to go ahead and start these lug nuts by hand. Get them started a few threads. This will help prevent cross-threading. Once we have them all started, I'm going to go ahead and snug them down. When tightening down the lug nuts, you want to do it in a crisscross pattern. Go ahead and torque your wheels down to 80 foot-pounds. Do this in a crisscross pattern. And you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.